hands in the air. Your hands were tied together with the lamp cord.
I feel like running, and if I get out of it and I can't remember anything.
You know, I couldn't physically shout, and I wanted to wake myself up from this uncontrollable sense of fear.
I reached my hand towards it, it just fell on the ground in front of me, and I was like, fuck that. I am going home. I am not staying here.
What I saw should not exist.
This is Supernatural Collaboration Media. I want to hear your story. I met today's guest through Adam, host of the Tallboy Radio podcast, Marine and Police Officer Beau Barnett. So let me start out by saying thank you so much for your service. It's an honor to have you on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I was told you have quite the list of paranormal stories. I'd like to start out with the story of the picture you sent me.
Yeah, so that picture was sent to me by my girlfriend at the time. I was living in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I worked a few jobs, and we were living together, and she sent that to me in the middle of the night. She said she saw that figure come out of our bedroom, and she took the picture and sent it to me on my phone. And you know, at the time I was kind of busy, so I really wasn't paying attention to it. She goes, "What is this?" And I said, "I don't know." But then I blew it up, and I realized I had a picture behind that, and it was blocking the picture. Whatever it was blocking the picture, and it was also blocking some curtains I had going to the kitchen. So I call it the bull's head because it looks like it's got horns a little bit, and I still got it on my phone. I still keep it. I've sent it to several people to try to find out what they think about it. I don't know what it was, and neither does she, and I don't know if anybody's got a good idea. I might send it to somebody who does film for a living and may be able to tell me what happened, how that happened.
It's one of the most scariest pictures I've ever seen because it's not a human figure. It definitely looks like a demon. You can definitely see horns and what looks like a goat face. With your permission, I'd actually like to use it in the video because somebody out there might say, "That's this one." Is this the first thing that's ever happened to you paranormal-wise, or have there been other things?
There has been other things that I guess I just call them I just can't explain. So with my mom, she claimed to be able to see and feel things. She said she was born with a veil. I don't know what that means. I think it means like the placenta was over her face, and when you're born like that, you're supposed to be able to see and feel things. I don't know. My dad swore by it too. But she lived in a house that was built in 1840, and it was a real old house in Mississippi. And when I got out of the military, I came to stay with her, and she goes, "I'm gonna put you in the front room," and I said, "Okay." And while I'm in the front room, she kept a set of keys in the front door, and I could hear the keys jingling, and the front door's right there. I'm looking right at it. I just can't see the keys. And I get up and I walk down the hallway. Now we're talking about 1840. These hallways were 15 feet wide. They were huge. And all wooden floors. And so I didn't say much, but I asked my mom, I said, "Hey, what's up with the keys jingling on the door?" And she goes, "Oh, that's just," and she named somebody. And I said, "What does that mean?" She goes, there's plenty of spirits in this house, and you know, we just get along with one another." And I said, "Okay." So a few nights later, I heard something that sounded like she fell out of bed. Boom, it was loud. And I jumped up and I went in the hallway, and she was standing in the hallway. And I said, "Did you hear that?" She goes, "Yeah." She goes, I'm not used to that. And I said, "Okay." I said, "I don't know if I want to stay in this room." She goes, "Well, I'll put you in the blue room. Nothing happens there." I'm just one room away. And when she did, honestly, nothing really happened. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything. I don't know what was going on in there, but I do know that Eastler Air Force Base is right next door, and she used to house pilots in there that couldn't get housing on the base, and they were there TDY for like 30 days. They used to pay her to put somebody in the house. She told me that a pilot came in there, and he was reading a book in the room that I was in, and he saw a figure come up out of the floor and go into the ceiling. And he left that night, and they wouldn't let her house pilots anymore.
I can see why, my god. I mean, trying to get your rest and then something goes through the floor. But your mom wasn't bugged by this at all. It was more like they were keeping her company.
Yeah, she actually said that it kept her from being lonely, and that at night she could feel something sit next to her and she would have conversations. To her, she never got scared of them. I mean, and to be honest, I can't say I was scared. What I could say is, when your mind's racing in the middle of the night, you're not getting much rest. You know, you're just listening for things, you know?
Absolutely, I would be. I'm into the paranormal, but I couldn't imagine all night somebody sitting by my side and knowing that somebody might drop through the floor. Especially if I was a pilot. People would think I'm nuts.
I'm sure if they told anybody that, they would probably bring them in for a psych eval or something. So they probably just said, no, we won't be staying there anymore.
Exactly. So you grew up in this house, correct?
No, not that house. I did not grow up in that house. I grew up in a different house. This was a house that she rented, and she fixed it up. The guy gave her a really low rent if she would do a lot of work on the inside, and she did. She cleaned it up, got the cobwebs off of it, you know, made it look like a house again, you know. And it's actually listed in the Biloxi, Mississippi historical records because it had been there for so long.
Did you have any experiences in the house that you grew up in?
There were feelings, but not really. I don't remember really seeing any or doing anything. I mean, nothing like that in that house at all.
Feelings like cold spots and being watched?
Like, every now and again, you'd go to a part of the house and something would just, whatever the feeling was, you didn't feel like you needed to be in there. Like, it was time to leave for whatever reason. And I don't know what that is, but you just get it, and it's just like, yeah, I don't want to be in here right now.
Your gut feeling was definitely right on that one, because something definitely didn't want you in that room. I'd like to know a bit more about how you and Adam met as well.
You know, it's when my grandfather died, it's also Adam's grandfather. We share the same grandfather, is what it is, right? So, up in Tupelo, Mississippi, when him and my grandmother died, my dad stayed in the house. To this day, I still own the house. My dad's passed on, and I still own the house. I'm trying to sell it to the person who's in it now, but he actually had a house next door that when he was taking care of my grandmother, and he and his wife at the time told me that they stayed in the house one night and they left in the middle of the night and went next. They won't tell me what happened. All I know is the next morning he had to bring a friend with him to go in there to close cupboards, and the friend was in there for like 5 minutes, was like, I gotta get out of here. And they never would tell me what happened because I stayed in that house a lot. He said it freaked him out. Now he retired from the military. He flew, so his mind wasn't crazy. You know, he wasn't crazy. There was a lot of things he was, but it wasn't crazy. So when he said something,
a level-headed guy.
Yeah, when he said something, you could take it to the bank. And I guess he just didn't want anybody to know how scary he really was. You know, so it's one of those things. I mean, the house has a feeling of my grandfather in it. My grandfather was a vocal, big person. As a matter of fact, before I met Adam, my dad had some friends over, and one of them claimed to have been a medium or something. My dad tells me this years later. And I guess he was walking her around the house. Yes, this is this room, this is this room. And she goes, hey, there's a guy over in the corner over there yelling at me. And my dad, you know, looked at her like, what are you talking about? So there's a man in the corner of this room, and he's yelling at me, and this used to be his room. And he goes, yeah, that's my father. This was his room, yeah. And she goes, well, I need to get out of here. So they walked out into the living room, and my dad just curiously asked her, why is he yelling at you? And she goes, well, I know something that he doesn't want me to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyways. And she goes, okay. He goes, you have a half brother in England. And my dad goes, makes no sense. Okay, whatever, you know. So she came over a few weeks later, And he goes, he's still yelling at me. He's yelling at me for different reasons now. But whoever that guy is, he owns that guitar over there. And the guitar was on the wall. It was his guitar. And he goes, yeah, that's my dad. And so this is before I even met Adam. He sent me a letter years later saying that he believed his dad and my dad were half brothers. And he sent me a lot of information. A lot of it checked out. But it really checked out when we did the blood test. We did a DNA test. And I had mine done in the United States. He had his done in England, and it matched us completely. We have the same, it matched us completely. So my grandfather was his dad's father.
Your grandfather definitely had some unfinished business. He wanted you guys to know that you were family.
He knew something. Yeah. Him being angry makes sense too, because he lived a full life over here in the United States after the war, and really just didn't have anything to do with the child that was in England. He apparently knew, and when he told me that, I went immediately back to my dad telling me, and just so happens about 3 days later, I went up to visit my dad, and we were sitting in the house, and I had the letter in my hand, and I said, "Let me read this to you." And I read it to him, and you could tell as it started getting deeper, my dad just started rubbing his beard, doing like this. He wasn't saying anything. And he goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "She was right." And I go, I don't know, Dad. This is before the DNA test. I said, "I don't know, but everything checks out." And then I took a picture of my grandfather on the wall, and I sent it to Adam. And Adam went to his grandmother. Now, this is a picture of my grandfather in his 70s. And she goes, "That's Leonard." She looked right at the picture. She hasn't seen him since World War II. "That's Leonard."
So you guys already having good evidence from your grandmother with the picture.
And she confirmed it to Adam. Yeah. Yep.
But then you guys set it in stone with DNA. Do you still have the guitar by any chance?
Yes, it's at the house now. There's several things that I need to go get before the house sells. And that's one of them.
It's a good thing to hang on to that. I strongly believe his spirit is attached to it.
Yeah, I believe that too. So, yeah, that was, those things were kind of happening around me, right? Kind of around me. Well, at the time that I got the letter from Adam, the same girl that I was dating, that with the bullhead, we had lived in a previous house together. And we had been dating 3 months, and we both decided we're both kind of broke. Let's kind of combine our finances. We're dating already. Let's rent a house, right? And she had a couple teenagers. So she went to a house. It was small, but it was doable. So I said, "Sure, let's get it," and we got it. Now, not that I don't think this makes any difference, but it was behind a very big graveyard in Mississippi. I don't think that matters in this case, but I'm just kind of saying that because it was a huge graveyard out there, a cemetery, actually.
It could have a little something to do with it.
Maybe. Well, when I went to go look at the house, we were both standing in the kitchen, and the kitchen's very small, and she was standing in front of me, and in between us, I can hear somebody say, "All right." A man's voice say, "All right." We were having a conversation. And my hearing's not great from the military. So I kind of stopped and paused for a minute. And I said, "April, did you just hear what I heard? I heard someone say, 'all right.'" She goes, "I heard something say, 'that's all right.'" And I said, "Well, I don't know what that is. I've never, we hadn't moved in yet, so it couldn't have been a radio, it couldn't have been a TV or anything like that. I don't know what it was." But soon after that, she told me, as she was growing up, that there were things in her house all the time. Now, her dad built that house with his own 2 hands, and he passed away. But he built that house, and she thinks that there's things following her. So, I don't know. We've been dating 3 months. I don't know what's happening. Now, I'm going to tell you this story because it's in my hairs are standing up on my arms because this day it freaks me out. I don't know what happened. December 5th, 2011. She asked me, "Hey, let's take a little quick vacation about an hour and a half north there's a lake up there. It's a reservoir. It's called Flint Creek, and they have cabins. And she says, we used to go up there all the time. Let's get a cabin. The reason why I remember the day is because I was a police officer, and I had sometime every other week I had Monday and Tuesday off. So I rented the cabin for Monday and Tuesday, December 5th and December 6th. Anyways, we went up there early in the afternoon, went to the ranger station, got the key, went to cabin 10. That's where we were. Nice cabin, big cabin, right on the lake. The back of it was kind of high up off the water, a big porch. And we dropped our stuff off, and then we ran to the store and got food. I was going to grill and do all this stuff. Anyways, we get back to the cabin, and we unpack, and we're kind of sitting around. By now it's dark, and there's lightning, and it's storming a little bit. It's not really storming, it's just lightning. And she is sitting facing the water with double doors. And she said, Beau, there's a man standing out there by the, he's got his face through the slats of the porch. And I said, okay. So we stepped out there, and I showed her, we're 12 feet down. There's nobody could stand there. So I didn't see it. So I didn't know what was happening. But she was adamant there was something there. And I said, okay. So we started talking a little bit more. I said, I'm gonna go take a shower. I got in the shower. I was hearing scratching, like there's mice in the walls, maybe. And I was like, well, I gotta let them know they got mice in the walls. Then I came back out, and her face was just flush, and she goes, I saw it again, and I'm telling you it's there, and I don't know what to do about it. Now, me being a police officer, of course I'm gonna go look. So I went out there and looked again, and there's just nothing. So we decided to go to bed, because now it's like 10:30 at night. She lays down on one side, I lay down on the other side. Now, the living room light was still on. I left it on kind of for a reason, in case anybody was getting in. Next to my bed, I had my gun and I had my flashlight, So, and I go, I got to figure out what this was. And I laid there. Now, I wasn't in bed for 3 minutes. She was still awake, but she was rolled with her back towards me. And I could hear that scratching right behind my head, right in the wall behind me. And I kept looking around behind me, and what is that? Now, the light from the living room's coming in. I could see inside of her bedroom pretty well. I mean, it's pretty lit up. And I'm looking around, and I don't know what's happening. And I remember going, it's going to be a mouse, it's going to be a rat, and I'm going to be able to tell her that's what it is. And a few seconds later, with her back towards me, she jerked. And I just kind of looked at her, and she wasn't snoring, she wasn't asleep, and then she jerked again. And I looked at her again, and then she rolled over, put her hands in the air, and her hands were tied together with the lamp cord. The lamp that was sitting next to her. I'm telling you this because I don't know. She goes, get these off me. She thought that I got out of bed and tied her hands together. I thought she tied her own hands together. But I grabbed my flashlight, I shined it on the tie. It was 2 loops wrapped around the middle, as tight as it can go, and then the cord pulled through it. Actually out of the wall. I don't know, and it was like an old, how can I say this? The old lamps used to have like a clear cord, but it was clear yellow. Like you could see through it. And that's how I remember. I reached over, untied her hands, I jumped off the bed. I said, we gotta get the hell out of here. She goes, I don't know what's happening. I said, I don't either. She goes, did you tie my hands? I said, I've been laying here the whole time. I'm telling you, I haven't done any of this. I said, we have got to go. I'm not staying here. So we grabbed some trash bags, and I literally grabbed all I could and threw it in the trash bags. She went back in the room to get the other stuff. I wasn't going back in there. We packed for 3 minutes. Whatever we grabbed in 3 minutes, we ran out the door with. And this is now like midnight or 11:30 at night. And now it is raining. And our stuff is sitting in the back of the truck. And my truck is facing the cabin. And as I'm backing out, and it's raining pretty hard, as I'm backing out, my headlights are facing the window where we were. And something picked up the curtain and dropped it. just like picked it up, and then the curtain dropped. And I peeled out over everything. We were the only people out there. It's a Monday. I peeled out over everything. She's screaming at me, what was it, what was it? I'm telling her, I got to get the hell out of here. I don't know where I am, you know. But finally we hit the road that we need to, and we see the ranger station. So I jumped out, and I'm pounding on the door of this ranger station, and of course nobody's in there. So we literally hop in the truck. We drive all the way back to Biloxi. It's an hour and a half. When I walk in the door, I'm soaking wet, and the very first thing I saw was our ironing board with an iron on it, and I went over to the iron and tried to tie my hands like she did, like I thought she did. And I made the loops, and I'm trying to tie it myself, and I'm trying to make it real tight, and I'm trying to do all this stuff. And she goes, "You just don't believe me, do you?" And I said, "We've been dating 4 months. I don't know what's going. I know I didn't tie your hands, so you had to have done it, and I could not tie it like she did. I could not tie it like that. Absolutely no way. I could not tie it. So we're at the first house that we lived together, and then I woke up the next morning, and I called my other police officer friend, and I said, he goes, "Hey, what's going on? I thought you were at Flint Creek." And I said, "Have I ever lied to you?" And he goes, "Nope." I said, "How long have you known me?" He said, 7 years. I said, "I'm about to tell you something. You just can't tell anybody else because they're going to think I'm..." And I told him the whole story. And he goes, "Holy shit, this seems like we got to go to the Cabin 10. I said, "Beau ain't going back to Cabin 10. Beau's not going to Flint Creek, period, ever. That's it." So I'm trying to get some of my money back too, because I told you before, we were kind of tight on money. So I called the number to Flint Creek. It actually went to an operator in Jackson. And I told her, "Hey, is this Flint Creek?" She goes, "This is a customer service for Flint Creek." And I said, "I need the station, the ranger station at Flint Creek." And she goes, "We're the ones that handle all the complaints." I said, "I don't think you could be able to handle this complaint." She said, "Try me, honey." So I told her the story. She goes, "Let me patch you through." And she patched me over to the ranger station. And the lady that gave me the key, she answered the phone. I said, "Hey, this is Beau Barnett. I'm staying in Cabin 10. She goes, "How's your stay?" I said, "Not good." She goes, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, last night," and before I could finish, she goes, "Hey, I need to do something. I'm giving you the phone to somebody else." So she gave me the phone to somebody else. And I said, "Who is this?" And we started having a conversation. I said, "Well, last night," she goes, "Oh, well, here's the other one again." She gave me the phone back to her. And I said, "Will you guys just listen for a second?" And she says, "Okay, so what's happening?" And I said, "My girlfriend had her hands tied by the lamp cord while we were laying in bed." She said, "Oh no, not again." That was her response. "Oh no, not again."
They gave you the keys to that cabin full well knowing there's something dark in there, with no warning.
Nothing. And I said, "We're not coming back." And she goes, "Well, you booked it for 2 days." I said, "Can I get any of that money back?" She goes, "I don't know." I said, "And everything in that place, we're not coming to get it. So if there's food in there, we just bought a bunch of food. Grab whatever you want. There might be some alcohol, just whatever you want. It's yours. We're not going back in there."
Yeah, there's no way she could have tied that herself because it was...
On the floor, right there by her. And without her, me and her really saying too much, I never said that I felt her jerking. I never said that to her. I asked her, "Were you awake?" She goes, "Kinda. I was kinda sleeping." I said, "Well, what did you feel?" She goes, "Something kept pulling my hands off the bed." That was her jerking. And she was jerking her hands back.
Yeah, it was a reflex action trying to pull them away.
Pulling them back. So that was her. That was what I was feeling, was her jerking like that. Her hands were going out over the bed, and she was pulling them back. And it wasn't. She was awake. She couldn't figure out what was happening until her hands got tied.
Yeah, there's no way either of you could have tied that.
I still can't do it. I could draw it. I can draw it, and I could also take a lie detector test, which I've done many times, but not on this subject. But I know what I saw. I don't know what it was. It gives me anxiety, and I'm going to tell you it does, because recently, within the last 5 years, a friend of ours was letting us stay at their house in Biloxi. Well, they were staying at Flint Creek. I had to go to Flint Creek to pick up the key to their house, and my wife, who's with me now, she's heard this story before. And as we were driving in there, I started hyperventilating, and it all flooded back, and I knew exactly. I looked right down, and I said, that's cabin 10 right there. I knew exactly. I pointed to it. I said, that's cabin 10, and I started hyperventilating. The lady, the person we were getting the keys from wasn't down there. They were down another way, but I had to grab the keys and get the hell out of there. It's like it's a form of PTSD that I've never seen. You know, I mean, it's.
I can see why. Revisiting one of your worst nightmares.
Yeah, so that's 2011, and you know, internet's not that great in 2000. It's okay. So I did some searching. You know, ghost at Flint Creek, ghost at nothing. Well, the other day when you contacted me, I did it again using my Chat GPT. Hey, you know, is there any stories about ghost at cabin 10 at Flint Creek? And you can look it up. It says cabin 10 at Flint Creek has been known to be haunted. Now we're 15 years down the road. You know, we're 15 years down the road. I had never tried to look it up again, but apparently some people, they call it folklore is what they're calling it. They're calling, you know, they're just calling, and that's what they should call it, because nobody really knows, you know? Nobody really knows. But I don't know.
I bet there's some forums out there about people stay at cabin 10.
It's gotta be something. And so when we got home, the girl I was dating at the time, she was really good at she acted like it's been happening her whole life. Things. That's why she was saying ever since she was a little baby, something's been around her and different things. This doesn't seem like that. It seems completely different because, you know, she's never told me about anything like that before. But again, this isn't the house with the bullhead, but I would get texts in the middle of the night when I'm working my job, and she would say, something's going on in Ashley's room, her daughter, behind. She goes, I could see light coming out from underneath. Ashley's not home. Ashley would go stay with her dad, who she didn't like, because there was things going on in that room. And then after we had the incident at Flint Creek, I actually contacted a paranormal group that was, it looked like they were very big in the area. They were allowed to visit Beauvoir, which is the last home of Jefferson Davis, which is supposed to be known to, you know, they did all this stuff. So I contacted them. I wrote them an email this long and told them everything that I thought was going on. And the lady contacted me back and says, we would really like to check out your house now that you're living in it. I said, no problem. She goes, you and your girlfriend can't be there. And I go, okay, you know, we'll stay with a friend or we'll get a hotel room or something. So we scheduled it. The day before they were supposed to come, she emailed me and said, everybody on their team is sick. Can't do it. And I said, oh, okay. So our lease was coming up. We had to make a decision whether to stay there or to move. We were moving specifically because we needed more room. So she went and found the other house where the bullhead was. And we went in there and we rented that place. Had 2 living rooms, had 4 bedrooms, had enough room for her daughters and everything. Well, when she was telling me that there was things going on in that house, I wasn't seeing or hearing anything at the time because I was working 3 jobs. So when I was asleep, I was asleep. But her oldest daughter, who was 15, was joking, saying that she tells the old lady in the closet that she doesn't want, she'll listen to her, but she doesn't want to see her. And I go, well, what are you talking about, Katie? She goes, there's an old lady in my closet, and I said, okay, whatever. So I was walking through the house by myself, had the phone to my head. I was talking to probably work, and I looked over to Katie's room, and there was an old lady standing in the doorway, staring at me. This is noon. I could see her as plain as day, standing in the doorway, and in the middle of me talking, I went, oh, whoa, 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 and I went straight for the front door, and I stood outside, and whoever I was talking to, and I can't remember, said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, man, let me go. I gotta call you back. And I called my girlfriend at the time, and I told her she was working too, so she was just kind of rushing me off the phone. But when they got home, and I told her, there's an old lady standing in that doorway right there. And she goes, yeah, it's the lady in the closet. I mean, that's the only way I could sleep is to tell her not to come out. And I went, what is going on? So I personally, after all that stuff's going on, after the bullhead, which was only weeks later, after all this stuff going on, I contacted the same paranormal people again. I told them I moved, but things are still happening. And she goes, great. Can you get out of the house? I said, yes, we can. I got my dog, I got her. The day before, all of us got sick. I don't get sick. I have over 800 hours of sick time right now. I don't get sick. We all got sick. We couldn't leave the house. We were too sick. So I told her we're sick, and she goes, it feels like something doesn't want us to come investigate. You know, she goes, I really want to do it, but you know, we have a lot of other cases too. And I said, no, I understand 100%. So what did I do? I started Googling, can I sage the house? Can I do something? I ordered sage. I ordered this little, it looked like a clamshell for the sage to sit in. I read how to do it, and I literally walked around that house with sage like an idiot, blowing sage in the corners and saying whatever they told me to say, had windows open and all this stuff. Here I was doing that in this house just because I didn't feel comfortable in that house. Well, when me and her split up, it wasn't too long after that, her and I split up. The day I left was about 11:30 in the afternoon. When I closed the door, I stopped and I said, whatever is in here needs to stay here. It ain't me that you're dealing with. You're dealing with them. You stay here and deal with them. And I felt like a fool talking out loud to a door. But I honestly felt like I had to. I felt like I had to say something.
Spirits can definitely attach themselves to people, so you did the right thing letting it know it was not allowed to follow you. What do you think about the people that say this doesn't happen or it's all in their head?
I think it would be beneficial for them, number one. But number two, if people don't believe it, that's fine, but they cannot think you're crazy because you had an experience of something.
Perfect way to put it. Very well said. Once again, Beau Barnett, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories. The hair on the back of my neck is still standing from the Cabin 10 story.
The fact that I'd only been there one time and I could point to the cabin and the road and everything that happened, and it was the middle of the night when I left there, it means something is instilled in my head that it's going to be there. It's burned in. It's going to be there for a long time, maybe ever.